The heavy steel gates of the high-security prison clanged shut behind Armin with a deafening echo that seemed to mark the end of his old life. The cold air of the prison yard hit his face, carrying the faint metallic scent of iron bars and concrete. Towering walls loomed on every side, topped with coils of barbed wire, and the watchtowers glowed with blinding floodlights. Guards in bulletproof vests patrolled the perimeter, rifles slung over their shoulders. Armin knew immediately, this was not a place for mistakes. He was ushered down a long corridor with peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights. On either side were rows of heavy cells, their metal doors riddled with small windows. From within, muffled voices, occasional shouts, and the rhythmic banging of metal echoed down the hall. Every sound hinted at the unspoken rules of survival here. A guard motioned toward a sign, Block C, the most dangerous section in the prison. "This is where they send the ones who can't be controlled," one guard muttered. Armin nodded silently. He didn't need to ask why. He had heard stories. Gang leaders, hardened killers, men who had nothing left to lose. A single wrong move here could be fatal. As he approached his assigned cell, he could feel the eyes on him from behind the bars. 4 inmates, all notorious figures in their own right, were already aware of the newcomer. One leaned back on the top bunk, arms crossed, observing silently. Another, heavily tattooed and burly, shifted his weight as if calculating whether to confront him immediately. The third lay with arms behind his head, eyes wide open, scanning every inch of Armin. The fourth stood near the window, posture tense, ready to react at a moment's notice. The guard pushed him inside. The heavy door clanged shut behind him, the lock clicking sharply. The cell fell into a tense silence. Armin took a slow, deliberate step forward, placing his small bag against the wall. 4 pairs of eyes followed his every movement. "Do you know where you are?" the tattooed inmate finally asked, voice low and threatening. "I have an idea," Armin replied calmly, his eyes meeting theirs. A smirk spread across one face. "You'll find out soon enough. Survival isn't for the weak." Armin scanned the cell. He noted every potential weapon, every blind spot, and every body position. He felt the weight of the challenge ahead. He was surrounded by men who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. Yet, deep down, Armin felt no fear. He had faced impossible situations before. Discipline, patience, and precise calculation had kept him alive in worse circumstances. He would need all of it here. The first night would be a test, he knew, but it would also be a lesson that strength wasn't always measured in brute force, and that in a place where fear ruled, calm strategy could be the deadliest weapon of all. As the dim light flickered above, the cell seemed smaller, the air thicker. Armin sat on the bunk, crossed his arms, and met the gaze of his 4 cellmates. Tonight, he would either become their prey, or show them that he was no ordinary man. The next morning, the prison yard was alive with tension. The cold concrete under Armin's boots felt heavier than the night before. He joined the line for breakfast, moving slowly, deliberately. From the corners of his eyes, he could feel the stares of the other inmates, calculating, probing, sizing him up. Here, every glance was a test, every movement a challenge. One wrong step, one flicker of fear, and he would be marked. As he reached the serving table, the tattooed inmate from his cell stepped forward, brushing Armin's tray roughly with his elbow. The metal clanged against the floor. "Watch your step, newbie," he hissed, leaning close enough for Armin to feel his hot, threatening breath. Armin adjusted the tray without a word. He didn't flinch, didn't react. The silence that followed was almost louder than words. Around them, other prisoners watched, sensing the tension, waiting to see if the newcomer would crumble. Once breakfast was over, the inmates were led into the yard for exercise. The air was sharp, and the walls seemed to close in with every step. 3 factions held their ground on different sides of the yard. Raqa's disciplined gang sat in neat rows, observing everything. Bilal's group was loud and chaotic, testing the boundaries with taunts and shoves. A smaller, quieter faction lingered in the shadows, unpredictable and dangerous. Armin's every movement was under scrutiny. By evening, his first real confrontation came. One of Bilal's men blocked his path to the bunk, arms wide, deliberately intimidating him. "Either you fall in line, or we make sure you regret being here," he sneered. Armin didn't flinch. He took a measured step forward, maintaining eye contact. When the inmate lunged, Armin used the man's momentum against him, twisting his wrist and pushing him off balance. Another stepped forward to intervene, but a subtle shift of weight and a controlled maneuver brought him down as well. No screams, no chaos, only quiet control. The other inmates stared, stunned. They expected fear, resistance, or a fight that would leave injuries on both sides. Instead, they witnessed precision, calm, and discipline. Armin didn't attack to hurt, he acted to neutralize, to survive without unnecessary bloodshed. Raka, watching from across the yard, narrowed his eyes. This wasn't the first-day novice panic he expected. The man was calculating, aware, unshakable. Even Bilal, the loud and aggressive one, felt a twinge of unease. When night fell, Armin returned to his bunk, muscles tense, mind alert. The lesson was clear: respect here wasn't demanded with brute force, it was earned with calm confidence and sharp strategy. The first real test of survival in Block C had been passed. Yet, as he lay awake listening to the low murmurs and shifting bodies around him, he knew this was only the beginning. Each inmate had their own agenda, and every day would bring a new challenge. But for the first time, Armin felt a quiet certainty: he could survive, not by fear, but by control. And in a place ruled by chaos, that might just be the most dangerous weapon of all. By midweek, the atmosphere in Block C had shifted. What had started as quiet observation now rippled through the inmates like a warning. The gangs who once ruled their corners with brute authority now found themselves recalibrating. Armin wasn't aligned with any faction, yet he wasn't weak. That alone was unsettling. He moved through the cell, watched interactions carefully, and subtly offered aid to weaker inmates without drawing attention to himself. Each act, small as it seemed, was noticed. Raka, the disciplined gang leader, observed silently from his corner. He had expected a weak, scared newcomer who could be manipulated or broken. Instead, he saw someone calm, calculated, and precise. Armin's mere presence began altering the balance of power. Even Bilal, the impulsive and aggressive troublemaker, noticed the quiet shifts, the whispers of respect, the hesitant steps of other prisoners when Armin was near. During the evening yard session, the situation escalated. Raka approached Armin directly, leaning against a wall and speaking in a low tone. "You understand how this place works," he said. "You could be useful. You could choose a side." Armin's response was deliberate, measured. "I'm not here to join anyone's war. I'm here to survive." Those words, simple and calm, carried weight. Survival in Block C wasn't just about strength, it was about awareness, timing, and strategy. And Armin was proving to all the inmates, and Raka, that he understood this fully. That night, a young, nervous inmate approached him quietly. "They made me hold something," he whispered, glancing around nervously. "If I refuse, they'll hurt me." Armin nodded without panic. Later, when the lights dimmed, he checked the area discreetly and confirmed the package contained drugs. He realized that the gangs were not only fighting each other but were also enmeshed in a broader corrupt system within the prison, a network the guards tacitly allowed. The next day, the tension in the yard came to a head. Bilal, frustrated by Armin's neutrality, shouted across the space, "Choose a side or face the consequences." Every eye turned to Armin. The cell fell silent. Raka's gaze remained calm, assessing. Armin stepped forward deliberately. "I don't play your games. But if you hurt the weak, I will act." The yard froze. For the first time, the inmates saw that this man was not just enduring, he was setting boundaries. Quietly, some of the other prisoners straightened, recognizing a rare authority that was not enforced through fear but through unshakable control. Even the guards, watching from the towers, noticed the shift. The balance of power in Block C had subtly changed. The man who was supposed to be prey was now a pivot around which fear and respect would slowly realign. And Armin, fully aware of the dangers, understood that this was only the beginning, the quiet before an inevitable storm. By the early hours of the morning, Block C was charged with a tense, almost electric silence. The four most dangerous inmates, who had spent days testing Armin and asserting their dominance, were now subdued, each sitting quietly in a corner of the cell. Their usual bravado, loud insults, and posturing were gone. They had learned, in no uncertain terms, that this newcomer was not to be underestimated. Armin hadn't slept. He had spent the night observing every detail, the position of bodies, the sounds from the corridor, the flicker of lights, even the breathing of the other inmates. When one of them made a small movement to test him, he reacted instantly, neutralizing the threat with precision. It was not brute force, it was controlled, calculated, and confident, enough to disarm fear and arrogance without spilling unnecessary blood. By dawn, guards arrived for their routine inspection. Armin remained calm, seated on his bunk, appearing almost unbothered. The other inmates remained silent. They had no complaints, no accusations, and no claims of injury. Their silence spoke louder than words. They had recognized that Armin had earned a form of respect that even the strongest in Block C could not ignore. In the days that followed, the dynamics of the block shifted subtly but unmistakably. Where there had been whispers of fear and plotting, now there was caution and respect. Fellow inmates deferred to him in small ways, giving him space, stepping aside in corridors, or letting him pass through the yard unchallenged. Even the guards, who had once overlooked subtle manipulations, began watching him closely, sensing that his presence influenced more than just the inmates. But Armin knew better than to relax. Survival in Block C was not just about intimidation, it was about constant vigilance. The balance of power was fragile, and one misstep could reignite hostility. Still, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had endured the first real test of Block C and emerged not only unbroken but strategically positioned. The 4 inmates who had once sought to dominate him now understood the boundaries. They realized that underestimating him could be fatal. For Armin, this was more than survival, it was the assertion of agency in a place designed to strip men of all power. As he leaned back against the cold wall, Armin allowed himself a slow, controlled breath. The fight for respect had been won without unnecessary violence. He had demonstrated that mental acuity, discipline, and calculated action could rival even the most physical threats. And in Block C, that understanding would define every interaction moving forward. Tonight, the cell was no longer a battleground. It was a place of tense equilibrium, one where even the most dangerous inmates had learned a crucial lesson. Armin was neither prey nor opponent to be casually dismissed. He was a force, quiet, precise, and deadly in his restraint. And that alone ensured he would survive where many others had failed.